Hey guys, I hope your league start is going well. I haven't made any videos yet, but I have already 5 characters and I tried 7 or 8 builds. So this video is gonna be all in one, and I just wanted to talk about the builds that I was doing, and maybe you're gonna get some inspiration, some ideas. Now, the reason why I haven't done any videos is that I didn't really want to do a video about my league starter because it wasn't really finalized. Usually for my league starter, I don't really min-max anything, don't try to optimize, just get like the basic setup, get to like red tier maps, don't even try to farm tier 16s, and by that time I'm already bored and want to move on to the next build. So that's why I don't really try to min-max or optimize my league starter. However, this time my league starter turns out to be, I just cannot make a better build than my league starter. So I'm gonna start with my league starter, which is Holy Strike. Now there's some weird thing with Holy Strike which doesn't really make it OP or broken in any way, but I do think that there is some kind of bug. And that weird thing is that if you use multi-strike, the Holy Strike minions, those armaments that appear next to your character, strike 6 times. Each swing 6 times. So for clearing it works really well because you can just swing once and cancel animation, but those minions gonna continue swinging 6 times, so in one spot. So by the time you get to the next enemy pack, they're gonna finish swinging, and that works really well for clear speed. When it comes to DPS, I don't understand why this works so well. The reason why this build overall was so good because it's just Guardian. Guardian has sort of like inbuilt free defenses and also free damage. All you have to get is pick up the Sentinel and it will absorb part of the damage that you take, 20%, and then you get these relics and you just get free high level damage auras. So you can just use defensive aura like Tempest Shield, Determination, I have Automation. So I have a lot of defenses for free basically, so I do not need to optimize the gear or anything, just got some life, have 5.3k life, get block. I don't even have recover life on block. And it just feels so much tankier than any other build that I tried this league so far. Now this is a minion build, however I am doing quite a bit of damage myself because I do have spiritual aid. So my Holy Strike damage, by the way, none of my gems have any quality. Some of them are still level 19 and the gear is far from optimized. So my own damage with a Holy Strike is 130,000 DPS, which isn't really much. And the minion damage is 221,000 per minion, and I get... Actually, I still have only 3 minions. At level 21, it goes to 4 minions. So right now, my overall DPS is actually around 1 million. In addition, I also have Summon Holy Relic of Conviction. This is the one that releases the Nova around enemies rather than themselves. But this is only falling, but it just feels so good to map with. Just one tap pretty much all the monsters and you can just move on. The rares even sometimes die from that just one tap. The bossing damage obviously isn't great, but I'm still surprised how tanky this feels compared to my other builds that I'm gonna talk about in a moment. I'm gonna leave path of building import code in the description if you wanna, I don't know, check this Holy Strike build. This is like super cheap. I'm using Percule Stow because I believe plus 3 to Holy Strike replicas Dragon's Fang's Light was expensive and I just didn't really bother getting that, and Percule Stow works really well as well. For my weapon, I'm just using the Rhiannon's Catalyst. By the way, the Holy Strike minions, they do copy your own weapon. So they do get this elemental damage from the Rhiannon's Catalyst. There are some better versions than this. For example, the Frost Breath would be a bit more DPS, not by much, but you yourself are also getting leech because of this weapon. So this weapon is kind of cheap, has good attack speed which you want, and yeah, it just works really well. Now the next build that I was doing, so I saw that there is greater chain which does not have less multiplier and it just gives 50% more chains. The skill that has a lot of chains was Arc, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna take Arc of Oscillation, I believe it's called. It's gonna be fun seeing like 14 chains. However, those 14 chains was not enough for clearing. There are so many monsters this league, it's just kind of crazy how much like AoE or clear speed you need to clear fast. Arc just wasn't really performing that well clear speed wise. Single target could have been okay, but I decided to, you know what, since it's not really working out really well and I have Inquisitor, maybe I should rework into something else. And I tried different versions. I thought about Held of Thunder, with the crit because there's a new support for Herald of Thunder. But other than that, there's not much new things for Herald of Thunder, and I thought I'm gonna probably do Herald of Thunder maybe next league. Hopefully there's gonna be more than just one thing for Herald of Thunder. And then I thought about like 3 different Herald of Thunder build ideas. With the Beacon of Mana's boots, which would be using like Stasis Prison. At that moment it was only 1 divine, then it went up in price. But you would still need all those unique items like Storm Secret Rings, and instead of Impulsa, which is unique body armor, then use Stasis Prison. But then you need to get a lot of reduced debuffs on you expire faster. You need to get a lot of these. Somewhere close to 350% is enough to avoid stacking too many of the Beacon of Madness stacks, whatever it's called. And these boots give explosions. So I thought, okay, I can get explosions this way, and I would have Stasis Prison, so I would have good recoup, but in the end, it's just not really worth it. And if I'm using Annihilating Light, it's very difficult to get enough resistances when you are already using so many uniques. So I dropped that idea and moved on to another character. So I wanted explosions, and I thought, okay, Occultists have inbuilt explosions. There's that new support which creates toads. Even if those toads themselves are not performing well enough, I could just use some other skill to clear. But in the end, I just didn't like doing that. Now, toads can do quite a bit of damage, however, they're very delayed, and there's no reason to speed up the delay before we start jumping and doing damage. They are affected by duration, but the duration is how long the ground effect lasts. So like you would create a ground effect and then toads appear. With Saboteur, you actually summon, it's not really summon, but you create 3 toads instead of 1 each time we proc. And that way we could kind of would spread out more and clear better, but it's just not worth relying just on these toads. Now their damage can actually be pretty nice. Actually, I did not even save the plan because just was disappointed. So I reworked that Occultist into Shatter Shard. There is like a trick, very easy trick now to proc the shield and bypass the cooldown. Normally you would want to get like very short skill effect duration, because when you block you get a buff, and during that buff you cannot block again. So you cannot proc the Shatter Shard or the Shield Shatter, and the Shield Shatter is the AoE that does damage around you. However, if you use Monastery Bell, each time you hit enemy for the first time, it will proc block. Whenever you proc block, and it just immediately procs the Shield Shatter. Like you cannot block, but you still block with this. So why does this take priority instead of this? So I'm not sure if this is a bug, or is this gonna be changed in the future, or is this intended mechanic, but either way, Monastery Bell plus Shatter Shard works really well, and you can just shield charge. The faster you hit enemies with shield charge, the more frequently you're gonna proc the Shatter Shard. So I had like a very simple kind of plan, 500,000 average damage with Shield Shatter. You can get a lot more, like one of the viewers was doing Shield Shatter and got over 3 million average damage, and I think like over 6 hits per second. So you can get a lot of damage from Shield Shatter. And you can also, if you are lucky, somehow get 30 quality, that would boost your damage by a lot. So I'm probably not going to include this in video description, this build, because it's not really finished. Another reason why I didn't want to do this, because I didn't like shield charging around. It just felt weird, and sometimes shield charging, you think that you're hitting the monster, but it's somehow to the side and it's not hitting and it's not working. I just didn't like this kind of moving around. I would rather play Flicker Strike. So then after that Occultist, when I quit Occultist, I decided I should just do another minute build. So I went with the Dancing Dervish. I thought about doing Animate Guardian, but I think last league I did Animate Guardian with the Headhunter buffs, and it also was using unique gloves, which made him gain Soul Eater stacks, and the only new thing that I could come up with would be a new way of getting Soul Eater for the Animate Guardian. And I didn't really want to do that, so in the end I just went with the Dancing Dervish, because Dancing Dervish just works really well, we clear really well, and this time I thought, okay, I'm gonna use Soul Eater for Dancing Dervish. And I was able to get to like 30 attacks per second for Dancing Dervish. Now this was Necromancer, not Occultist. The biggest problem with this that I had, I was just so squishy. I did not understand why was I so squishy. As soon as I went to like tier 11 maps, it just became so squishy. I couldn't really figure out what else to do, and so this one was using Ancient Skull just to... it just gives a lot of damage. For the amulet I was just using Envy because there's not much else you can add for Dancing Dervish. It doesn't benefit from plus levels. There's no like double the amount of Dancing Dervishes with the what was it, Dark Monarch helmet, and your shield slots are disabled. You cannot weapon swap, so you don't have normally block. You could still build around block with the bone offering, and I thought about doing that, but again I wouldn't have shield anyway, so I wouldn't be able to recover life on block, and I thought we're just gonna clear fast and I'll just hopefully survive by hiding from monsters. Well, that didn't really work. So this build had a couple million DPS. This is actually I must have changed something. It had more damage than this. None of the gems have quality because 1 GCP is like 2 hairs now, so I didn't really wanna invest too much. For the auras, I was running haste, determination, vitality. You can have other minions, but when you use Ancient Skull, whenever your minion crits, it's pretty much gonna die unless it's very tanky and you invest into tankiness. But Dancing Dervish does not need tankiness. I just went full minion damage rather than any tankiness. Another issue with the Ancient Skull, you cannot convocate minions when we hear whispers. You cannot like convocate and pull those minions closer to you. So if you get stuck, or if they get stuck, for example in a ritual trying to kill some unkillable totem, the only thing you can do is hopefully just run far away and hopefully we're gonna teleport to you. But if the area is too small, there's nothing you can do. I decided to quit this as well. I will include this PUB in the description, but if you look at my previous builds, you can find probably a better Dancing Dervish or a better Animate Guidance build instead, I would recommend, or Chains of Common. I even decided that it was my best build of all times with the Chains of Common and Cane of Kulamak that had Explode mod. Everything was just kind of exploding and you didn't really need to do anything and it was just so good. Oh, by the way you feed souls to your random minions, you can use automation with transfusion and corrupting fever. You do not want to max it out unless you are willing to spend like 2000 life every time automation procs. The transfusion is kind of accumulative. How do I say this? You do not need to spend 200 life all at once. You can spend any amount of life and it will accumulate. But every 200 life you will feed 1 soul to your minion. But if you spend, let's say 800 in this case, then you're gonna feed 4 souls. Maximum souls are 45. So it would take like 11 seconds. Well, actually it would take, let's say 22 seconds because you have 2 minutes in this case. Actually you need to spend 9000 life, I believe, for 45 souls. But this is how you can automate very easily. You just need to figure out how to get regen, which I do get as a necromancer because minions are leeching life to me. But I was also using one of the new belts that have shrine effect and using replenishing shrine, which I believe is like 6.8% life regen per second, unless you also get increased shrine buff effect, which would boost that a bit more to like 9% or something like that. Now to sustain Dancing Dervishes, all you have to do is use Squirming Terror. Whenever you equip this, it spawns worms every 2 seconds. So every 2 seconds worms appear, Dancing Dervish kill those worms and refresh the rampage and continue existing, I guess. I decided to quit this build because it just was too stressful and it was just too squishy and I just didn't enjoy it. Otherwise I would have liked clearing with those Dancing Dervishes. So then I thought, okay, it's time to go big explosions. But I haven't played Ignite builds in a long time and I thought, okay, Chieftain has probably the coolest explosions now, and also they buffed Chieftain to have, depends how you want to look at it, buff or nerf, used to be 5% chance to explode, dealing 500% of monster life as fire damage, but now it's 10%, so it's twice more chance to explode and it's gonna be a lot more consistent. In comparison, usually other explosions deal only quarter. They only deal 25% of their life and this one is dealing 250% of their life. So this can be like super massive ignite damage and it can just clear tougher rares if they are other monsters that are high HP, I guess. But you can't really rely on that against bigger targets, bigger bosses, because there's no way to create very tanky rare monsters. So I thought instead of Chieftain would be actually difficult to get damage, and I decided to go with the Elementalist and use the Gloom Shrine belt. The Gloom Shrine belt gives 40% chance to explode enemies, dealing a quarter of their life as CS damage. So the explosions are not as strong, but we can still really do a lot of damage if there are some tougher arrays. Chieftain would also have issue getting chance to ignite, and tattoos that give chance to ignite are hella expensive. So I went with the Elementalist because it's easier to get the damage, it's easier to get AoE, you don't need to worry about chance to ignite because it always ignites, and it has an inbuilt defensive layer. So ignited enemies by you have 40% of their physical damage they deal converted to fire. So this is sort of like, it doesn't stack additively with Cloak of Flame. Cloak of Flame converts the damage you take, and this is converting the damage that monsters deal. So it doesn't even show in PUB because PUB doesn't know that the monsters are dealing physical damage, unless I guess you would set it up somewhere here. So this is the last build that I'm playing still. It's not the tankiest, it's the same issue, it just doesn't feel tanky enough for bigger targets, and it's not pleasant fighting bigger targets. However, the explosions are so massive, it's just so fun and satisfying clearing the whole screen with those explosions. I was trying to still figure out how to make it tanky enough without investing too much. Originally I forgot to take glancing blows, so could use a Fallborn Skin of the Lords. Actually, it does not need to be a Fallborn. However, it needed to have the right amount, the right socket colors, because you cannot modify socket colors on this item, so you have to get the right colors. So I needed 2 green, 2 red, and 2 blue, and the cheapest one I believe was like 17 divines or something like that. Luckily, I got the Fallborn, which loses 50% increased global defenses, which isn't really a big deal since I do not rely on energy shield, and losing armor is a bit problematic. This was just one way of improving the defenses. You can do so many different things. I don't want to go into too many details about like how this is set up, but glancing blows getting on the body armor, it's also +2. So I'm using actually Penance Brand. Once again, the Penance Brand Replicas Dragon's Fangs Flight would be better. However, I also needed more defenses, more resistances, more attributes until I got this Fallborn, which gives 50% increased elemental and chaos resistances. Now, single target could still be better. It's still around 2 million, so it's not that great, and I'm using a Scorching Ray for a bit of extra damage and to apply stronger exposure, but it's really dangerous standing still and channeling, so I rarely use it. By the way, the trick how I'm getting a lot of AoE is I'm using this combo. I'm using Light of Meaning, which gives passive points you allocate extra 6% increased fire damage. And then I'm using 100% effect of non-keystone passive skills in radius. This is from the Fallborn Might of the Meek. This one, look at this. Each AoE nodes give me 24% AoE. So this is 72% increased AoE. 72% increased AoE from just these 3 nodes. Then Penance Brand does need quite a bit of cast speed, so I'm also getting cast speed. And the areas that overlap with this also grant, instead of 6% increased fire damage, now we are granting 12%. So this is giving a lot of damage, a lot of AoE. Even these give a lot of damage for the Penance Brand, because it's increasing the base physical damage and then the fire damage. And to get enough life, I'm just using Fatal Small Cluster Jewels here. For the auras, running Determination, a Held of Ash for the cool explosions. By the way, Held of Ash MTX is Despair Held effect. This is one of the coolest Held of Ash effects in my opinion. And then I got Tempest Shield and Automation to automate. Oh yeah, to automate Immortal Call with moderation. And life tap, so it doesn't drain my mana because I don't have that much mana. And I am using all 4 golems. I thought about using companionship support, but then you can only run 1 golem. However, companionship support is like 20 divines or something like that, so that was out of the question. So I'm running all the 4 golems. The stone golem increases a bit of my defenses and gives regen. You could use the transfigure version, whatever it's called, which can absorb melee damage you take, but it has 15-second cooldown. Even with the Elementalist node, which resummons golems after 4 seconds, it would still leave a very big gap of not having that golem, but you may want to try that. Then Summon Flame Golem gives AoE and damage. Summon Lightning Golems gives mana regen and attack and cast speed, which you do need for shield charging and faster casting Penance Brand or faster procs. And then Summon Chaos Golem gives a lot of chaos resistance and damage over time multiplier. And obviously I'm getting a bit of Golem buff effect. And yeah, that's my latest build. Now, this build is also kind of done. I'm level 92. Ideally would want to get a few more levels and pick up these nodes. And to get recover life on block, I'm actually using Surrender Shield because it gives flat amount of life when you block, but that flat amount is more than 5% of my life that I would get with the rare shield. And it also gives a lot of armor and high attack block. Yeah, ideally you would want to combine Gloom Shrine with... there are like 3 other shrines that could go along with this, but one of them I believe is Massive Shrine, which is super expensive. Resistant Shrine is just Mirror's Impenetrable Shrine, which doesn't really do all that much for this build. It just increases, I believe, either defenses or specifically armor, ES, and evasion. I only have 5.1k armor and it's just not worth the price. So yeah, I'm gonna leave Baffle Building import code for this build as well, and I'm not sure what build I'm gonna be doing next, but I think I'll maybe do 1 or 2 more builds and then take a break and go back to making video game. I have not decided yet what my next build is gonna be like. There are so many ideas that I have, but usually something doesn't work well enough or something completely doesn't work how I wanted. I had to scrap like, I don't know, over 10 build ideas because something just didn't work or once again be too squishy. I did so many builds, I don't really want to repeat the same build that I did with just one small difference. So I'm just looking for a build that would have decent clear, decent damage, and decent tankiness. It does not need to be high damage, does not need to be like super mega clear speed or anything, just kind of overall decent. So if you got some interesting build ideas, let me know in the comments below. But for now, thank you for watching and I will see you hopefully soon. Bye bye.